Hello, everyone. This is Yamina, and this is the July edition of the Dr. GPCR video newsletter. And this morning, I'm super happy to have with me Nicole Perhazer. Hi, Nikki.
Hello.
Good to see you again. We met not too long ago in person, actually less than a month ago, or a little bit
A little
at
bit
the
over. A little bit
a little
over.
bit at the Gordon conference in Switzerland, and it was so good to see you and to meet you in person.
Yes, I think this was one of the most incredible conferences I went to, not just because I organized it, tooting my own horn. No, um, but because it was the first time that I have been more mature in my career. And so I actually knew a lot of the people going, and it felt like going to visit extended family as opposed to coming to a new conference and, feeling nervous and anticipating the interaction. So it was a very cool experience.
I think so too. And I think, again, I'm going to put it on record. As I mentioned before we hit record, I think you gave a fantastic talk.
Thank
It
you. I
was just,
appreciate it.
it was just amazing. And the other thing is that the GRC was, it was the second part of the entire week. We had the GRS. And I think it was not only well organized because you and Brian organized it, Brian Bender, but also because I think the level of the science and the presentations at the GRS was so high.
Yes.
I mean, we're in good hands.
Yes,
I
I
mean,
agree. I was very encouraged by the early career investigators. We had a really hard time picking speakers because there were just a lot of phenomenal talks. And of course, some of them were elected to talk at the Gordon Research Conference, so we didn't have them present at the GRS. But it was difficult to choose. We ended up choosing based on a breadth of interest. So you lose some spectacular talks that way. But I think that we got to see them through posters and through their presentations. And I agree. I think the next generation of GPCR researchers is going to be it's going to be good.
I think so too. And the other thing is that since we were a smaller group at the GRS, we kind of got to know each other. We got comfortable before the GRC started. And even I, who I've been in the field a long time now, and everybody knows, maybe not me directly, but Dr. GPCR, even I felt the difference. We got really the big shots coming in on Sunday evening or Sunday in the afternoon. But I think the GRS and the GRC were really amazing from a scientific perspective, but also from a networking perspective. You got to sit with all sorts of people, you got to talk, you got interactions with different levels. I think it was a really great experience.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about the Gordon Research Conferences that I really think they did well is this GRS, the Gordon Research Seminar, which for people who don't know is the day before the official conference, and it's just early career investigators. So graduate students, postdocs, sometimes very young faculty or people about to become faculty. And I think that's neat because one difficulty with going to a conference is intimidation. And not feeling comfortable, especially if you're alone, you're not with your lab, maybe you came on your own and you see these bigwigs, and you
Yeah.
get very intimidated and nervous to speak to them. So the GRS gives you an opportunity to meet others in the field, become more comfortable, make some early friendships so that when you go into the Gordon Research Conference, you have that little bit of stability. And I think it makes a big difference. I really do.
It does. It does. And it's funny because since I got to participate in the GRS, I was before I got the invitation, I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, I really want to go to this thing. But it's really blocked and locked into the early career scientists, the trainees, which I think is important. But at the same time, I wish we had the opportunity to let in a certain fraction of other, more advanced career scientists into the GRS, just to give us the opportunity. I have a friend, well, actually, Sam Hoare, who's also known as Pharmacanics. He's the kinetic data analyst, and Sam loves trainee talks. He actually prefers trainee talks. Hopefully, he won't mind me saying this on record because he always finds the trainee talks to be so stimulating and so pleasant to have conversations with trainees. So I think
There's
it was
also
great.
there's an extra level with a trainee giving a talk. I think there's a lot of pressure to be very prepared and to put your best foot forward because you feel like this is your introduction to a lot of people in the field. And so you want to make a good impression. And I think that makes a difference when you're preparing. I know personally, I still practice a lot, a lot, a lot. And I get really nervous if I don't do that practice. I get really nervous regardless, but that practice really, really helps. And I think when you get to the career stage that a major PI is at, it's more difficult to prepare like that for every single presentation. So I'm kind of in the same bank with him. I enjoy seeing, of course, the bigger scientists give talks because they give a breadth of research, but trainees really focus on their story. They usually have it very well transitioned and put together, and I think it makes a more enjoyable talk.
No, agreed, agreed. I mean, and you see it at all sorts of conferences where you have the trainees that finish on time. They have numbers at the end at the bottom of each slide, and then you can refer back to those. And then sometimes you have the more established PIs who have 150 slides for a 20-minute talk, and they either fly through it and say, "Oh, I'm just going to skip to the end." And
Right.
this is this is a sickness that many of us have. And to your point, I think getting prepared and practicing is absolutely important. And I remember, I think, mentioning this to you at the Gordon conference. I couldn't sleep. I think my talk was on Thursday night, and I think on Monday night I couldn't sleep. So I worked from like 2:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. because I needed to finish and practice my slides. And I still practice them the day of
Yeah.
before going into the session.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a skill, presenting and sharing your research and making it digestible, because even when you have a shared audience that all studies similar proteins, like with the GPCR family, um, we still do very nuanced techniques. And I think
Yes,
we range from, very basic molecular, I shouldn't say basic, but molecular biology and structural biology all the way up to translational applications. You have to still give that information to your audience and orient them so they can understand.
agreed, agreed. Which takes me to the news that I wanted to discuss today. And when we can come back a little bit to the GRS and GRC, because actually our speakers on Friday were holding the third Dr. GPCR symposium this year. We've changed the format of the Dr. GPCR Summit to multiple events during the year, and so on Friday, July 21st, we're holding the Structural and Molecular Insights into GPCR Activation Symposium, and our speakers are all trainees. So, and it's interesting because our speakers most of them come from interactions at the GRC and the GRS.
Oh, that's
So I thought I love the talks, and I figured these were such great presenters, great research. So why not invite them? And we transformed this entire day on Friday into a trainee day. So we're going to have a shorter day. We're going to have 4 trainee talks, and then we're going to have a career panel. So let me tell you a little bit more about the trainees. So we're going to have Alex Serbo, who is going to talk to us about potentiation of beta adrenergic receptor signaling by cell swelling, which I think is a really cool.
I
Um,
think his paper just came out online too. Knock for
yeah, yeah, it's very very timely. And then we're going to have Dr. Polina Isankina. She's going to talk to us about structural basis of regulation of human chemokine receptor and HIV co-receptor CCR5, one of our favorites. Then we're going to have Dr. Jiangming Han, who is going to hate me for doing this. He's not submitted his title yet, but this is a good excuse to come on Friday and hear the talk and figure out what are we talking what is he going to talk about. And then we're going to close the morning session with Dr. Katerina Nemec. She's going to talk to us about functional modulation of PTHR1 activation and signaling by RAMP2, which I find fascinating.
Yes, the ramps are all popular. Or we had quite a few submissions for the GRS that had to deal with ramps, and they were very exciting. It's fun to see this new. I mean, it's not a new regulatory mechanism, but I feel like it's getting a new breath in research.
It is, and because I feel like once they were discovered, we stopped at a couple of GPCRs that we were very quickly able to identify their interaction with the ramps, but I don't think we had an opportunity to look at a larger pool. Although Tracy Handel and Kathleen Caron's work looked at all chemokine receptors with the ramps and showed that there are interactions there. But I don't know anyone who's listening to this and watching this on YouTube should reach out to me if we have identified what is physiologically what is the role of these interactions, or in a pathophysiological setting, why are ramps interacting with GPCRs and how do these influence their function?
Yeah, very cool. Sounds exciting.
I think it's going to be super exciting. And then for the career panel, we actually have a 5-person career panel, and we try to really cover it all. So we're going to start off, well, everybody's going to be in the same Zoom virtual room, but we're going to have Dr. Joanne Trejo. I love Joanne. She's just wonderful, and she's a professor at UCSD, as you know. And then we're going to have Dr. Brian Airy, who is a senior director at BMS. So he has been in industry for a very long time, and he's been at BMS, I think, for quite a number of years. Then we're going to have Dr. Katarzyna, and I don't want to butcher her name. She's actually an editor at Nature. She was also at the GRC.
Yes.
And I thought she's coming on the podcast as well because I want to get her input on the trends from a GPCR perspective in publication. What is Nature looking for? What are the trends? I mean, she's the one, or they're the ones who get these papers.
Right.
And it's really interesting to see what type of work is being done.
Yeah, it would also be really interesting to get her take on the changes in publication that are happening, especially surrounding like eLife and the model that they've altered and what she thinks about it. I feel like that's getting a lot of hubbub. I'm very interested. I just had my latest publication was in eLife right before they changed the rules. So it was interesting to watch that transition and the reaction from, scientists online.
Well, if you can join us on Friday from 10:30 a.m., maybe it's a question she might want to dive into. And then we're going to have Naomi Hanley, and she is at Octant. Actually, Sri Kazuri suggested I saw Naomi present at a virtual conference last year, and she's a wonderful speaker. And she's been at Octant for a long time, navigating, working as a scientist in a small company in a biotech in a fast-paced environment. And then our last but not least, we're going to have Mazdak Rajania. And Mazdak is actually a cryo-EM expert. And he worked with Patrick Sexton back in the day, but also then worked at Thermo Fisher. And now he is a consultant, a freelance consultant. And his consulting firm is called CryoDuck, which I think is really cool. And he has all sorts of really great articles on LinkedIn about, using cryo-EM for drug discovery, and really love chatting with him. He has a breadth of expertise and all sorts of experiences. So hopefully people are going to enjoy having the chat. And we reserved an hour and a half for the career panel. I felt like an hour just goes by so quickly.
It does. I was thinking at the GRC or GRS, of course, you were on our career panel, along with a industry professional and someone in more traditional academia sense. And I felt like that was one of my favorite parts of the GRS because one, we had a lot of interaction. The trainees asked a lot of questions. We had way too many questions for the hour that we allotted you guys. But two, because it was very authentic. And I don't know if it was the setting that it was in, the fact that it was private, but I felt like everybody gave very genuine answers and responses to how they handled difficult life situations throughout their career and how they navigated choosing a path that fit their goals after a PhD. And I found that very valuable to listen to people who are successful and, have, in your case, crafted a career for themselves. But it's nice to see that, it's not a straightforward path. There are bumps and humps that get in your way, and navigating it is difficult.
It is. And thank you for that. I thought the career panel of the GRS was really awesome. And at the end, I was like, oh, this is it. I want to talk more. I want to answer more questions because we were three obviously on the stage, but the interactions, the questions we got from the audience were so insightful. it was such an amazing hour. I wish we would have had, at least another hour to chit chat.
Yeah, I think there's clearly we have a lot more PhDs nowadays than we ever have before. And there's
Yeah.
just, with the changing career landscape, it's very difficult to do the traditional academic career path. And so seeing that there are other options is important for trainees. I think to show them that other options are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the traditional paths that we kind of, are trained to do since we're students. And I think that the trainees are really catching on. I think a lot of them have very key questions about what to do and when to do it and how to do it, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing to get to, or the difficult thing to put, at least for me, it was difficult to put my mind to it because I grew up, scientifically speaking, in a fully academic environment. And it was, you do a master's and you do a PhD, then you do a postdoc or two, and then you go be a professor. And it was a difficult thing to, it took me time to realize that it was not something I absolutely wanted to do, but also figure out, okay, so what now? What do I like? What don't I like? And how do I do it? What does a two-page resume look like?
Yeah.
How do you answer situational questions, or what do you do? And it's it's like starting a new experiment where you think you know what you should be doing in that experiment, but then you have to put your mind to it and just do it.
And you have to fail the first time and get back up. That's always how my
Absolutely.
first experiment goes. It either works perfectly and I can't repeat it, or I
Yes.
fail.
Absolutely. I think those are the two choices there.
Yeah, and I think, and now I'm saying this as someone who's pursuing a career in academia, but I think the traditional path to get there is getting longer and longer and longer, and that's also becoming a barrier. People are spending a lot more time, and I guess I should say mostly what I see in the US. I don't know how this translates to other countries, but in the US the PhD is much longer. People are taking, several years directly out of undergrad just to tech to gain that experience to be competitive. So some of them, they don't get onto the postdoc market or have their PhDs till their late 20s, early 30s. And, those are important times in a young person's life, where you're making other decisions outside of career path. Um, and I think that's also pushing a lot of trainees to, alter their goals and see what else is out
Yeah.
there.
I think so too, and you're right. I think it's the assessment you just made is more applicable to the U.S. and Canada. I want to say in Europe, depending on where you are. I mean, I have Alex Hauser in mind in Denmark because we were talking about how the system
Mhm.
works in Denmark, which is absolutely it's different, and it costs getting as a PI, hiring a postdoc takes a lot of money because the salaries are much higher, and also you have the luxury or the ability to decide from a personal perspective, would you like to have children, what does that look like, and you can have
Mhm.
that balance. Whereas here in the US, it's, I think, even Canada, it's a little bit more complicated and there are sacrifices to be made. So I think,
Right.
it's all those years where you could have a family, or you could have the ability to purchase a house, or build some wealth in the long term.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what you want to do. It all depends on how, what your priorities are and how you want to do things. And I always tell people, it's like, when you're looking for a job or your next opportunity, it's like dating. If you don't like the other party and they don't like you back, or there's something odd, then just run. It's most likely not going to get better with time.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to be as transparent as possible with my mentees and show them that, yes, I love academics. Yes, I want to pursue a career in academia, but these are some of the things that I've had to choose in order to make that a possibility.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them are very surprised, especially I think of myself when I first started science. I was very doe-eyed and bushy-tailed, and everything was cool and all those sacrifices. Who cares? I can do it. But as I get older and my priorities start to shift, I now sympathize with my previous mentors that I'm like, oh, that's
That's
why you
why.
were having a hard time or
Yeah.
challenge. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about making the choices that fit your desires. But first, you have to figure out what is it that you want.
Right.
What are you comfortable with? I think our career panel on Friday is going to be really the diversity of
Mm.
the speakers. I hope is going to help the trainees who are going to join us and ask questions, get an idea. I think you'll learn a lot. One of the goals with the podcast as well, with the Dr. GPCR podcast, is to talk to as many people as possible in the field because it resonates with all of us because
Right.
we all love GPCRs. And we can figure out, okay, if this person did this and this is the lessons they learned, and how would that apply to me? How would that make me feel if I would have chosen the same path or changed? So no, I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
think career panels are really important. I also think that the mission of Dr. GPCR is really cool to have as many people exposed on this platform as possible because it's just there are so many options to do different career paths with the skill sets that we have, and knowing that they're there is half the battle. And I think
yeah.
getting this firsthand exposure to people's experiences is extremely valuable for a lot of people, and I really do think that the resources is awesome. So
Thank
kudos
you.
to you.
Thank you so much. No, I really enjoy doing this, and I always, get out of these conversations really, really hyper excited because I get to learn more about people, more about their research, about their career paths, and having a diversity of speakers allows me, at least in my mind, to reach many different people.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can think about a method, or you can think about some, like, I don't know, a recipe, and the way it is presented may or may not resonate with you, and you have to find the one that resonates with you. So having the diversity in guests is giving our the audience the ability to find the people that they resonate with
Mhm.
and learn from them.
Absolutely.
All right, so that was our news. We're excited about Friday. We have two more events, one in September and one in November. We're going to start advertising. Oh, one thing before I forget, because you mentioned this. So we've been struggling to get poster presenters for our symposia. And I think your suggestion before we hit record was spot on. So just to put it out there, you do not need to have a full poster to present. You can just come in, have a chit chat, have a couple of slides, um, talk to each other about your work. This is a safe place where we want it to be constructive, where people can come in and have a conversation. The poster session is not recorded. We're using a space called Kumo Space. And it's a little bit like Wonder, where you can hop onto a conversation and have multiple people and share your screen. The only thing we ask people is to prepare a 1 minute video abstract to tell us what are they going to talk about. So you need a 1 minute video to tell us what you're going to talk about, a talk title, and then a few supporting slides, or just just one slide with a problem that you want to tackle and get people's opinion on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think posters are a good opportunity for early career to share their work. I think having it be more of a flexible setting that you can make a couple slides. It doesn't have to be, I'm speaking to myself, a perfectly primmed, polished
Yeah,
poster, especially since it's not public or,
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
not or videotaped. So it's a good way to get some workshop done by people who might have expertise outside of your normal crew. So I think it's a great way to get some networking done and to get some scientific help.
Absolutely. And yes, you're right. It's not public. You have to be a Dr. GPCR ecosystem member, which is free. You have to tell us why you want to join in, as in what is your affiliation to the field. Once you're in, there's a link to our Kumo space, and those interactions are not recorded. And even for the presentations, we typically ask, well, we always ask our speakers if they allow us to record their talks. But even if we do, the talks don't become available to the public. You have to be a premium member to be able to rewatch the talks. And we're going to do the same for the career panel. Although I'm trying to think maybe we should put that on YouTube to give it a little bit more visibility, or maybe make little snippet clips for people to come back. But I think being there live and asking questions live and having that interaction is absolutely priceless.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. I myself am about to embark on the job market here in the next year or so, so hopefully I'll have some big updates for you in a
I hope
year or
so.
two.
I hope
But
so.
I'm
That
excited
was,
to watch it grow.
thank you. And that was going to be my question, if there's any news on your end that you'd like to share today. But super excited to see where life takes you, where the journey takes you. And obviously, you know where to find me. Always happy to help and always happy to answer any questions or even make any introductions that you might be interested in having. And it's a big happy, for the most part, GPCR family. We're always. I think to be honest, I think our family as a scientific community is most of the 99.9% of the time very really friendly, and people are really trying to help each other. I mean, the Gordon and conference and the Gordon research seminar were living proof of that.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
really awesome, and thank you again for organizing such a great seminar.
Oh, no problem. I think organizing seminars is a whole lot of work that I didn't realize. Um, and I'm sure you're very, very familiar with it at this point, but it's a
Yeah,
good experience, and it's a good way to get in touch with the community.
absolutely, it's like organizing a wedding.
Yeah. Oh
Everything has
gosh, I don't want to do that again either.
everything has to be timed, and then you're panicking until you make sure that everybody shows up, and
Yeah.
then everybody's happy. And when it's done, you're like, okay, I did my
Yep.
job.
Yes. The
There
the
you go. I
relief
keep
at the end is the best part.
agreed. Thank you, Nikki, for your time. I really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
All
See you on
right.
Friday, hopefully.
Bye.